All right, welcome. This is Jeff at the Big Hairy Dog, and this is a Big Hairy Dog webinar on screen design and document design in both version 8 and 9, since they are extremely similar. And so I have a little agenda up on the screen. If there may be people still joining, I'm not sure, but we got 12, so I think that's a pretty good number. I think we should get started. So. All right, so screen design, I guess. First, there's multiple different screen designs, modes. This last thing right here, this thing here is version 8 only. Version 9 does not have that feature, which is both good and bad. But let's get there when we get there, right? So let's talk about Page Manager first, I guess. Page Manager is one of the modes in screen design that is used to edit both sides. What I mean by that is that we just go to something simple like, let's go to a receipt. Yeah, right, whatever, version 8. I don't have a license on that one, so it's feeling like it needs to reset inventory. But that's fine. We can bump over to version 9. Nice. All right, so Page Manager exists in here. So if I right-click this and I go to Interface, that's how you get to it, by the way, right-click Interface. There's all your page. There's a Page Manager here. But now there's also a Page Manager back here. If I right-click any column header, not the fields, nothing to do with the fields. You got to be right-clicking on a column header, and you'll see also a Interface Page Manager. Now those two, although they have the same name, are very different. Now here in version 8, you see that if I right-click Interface Page Manager, again, exactly the same, and right-click Interface Page Manager, also exactly the same. So now, what is the difference between this Page Manager and the other one? Well, all right, the Page Manager in Form View, it only modifies these tabs at the bottom. So you see at the very bottom of my screen, in either version, I have these little tabs down here, receipt details and tender, receipt and ship to, down here, right? Yep. So in Page Manager, I can add those or delete them. That's it. I can click add and I can make a new one, and and then I can click apply and it would have 3 tabs down here. So that's all Page Manager does in a form view. It lets us manage the pages, which kind of makes sense actually. Now, Page Manager in list view actually modifies the columns. So if I right-click this and go into Interface Page Manager in here, basically if it's above the line, it's in the screen. If it's below the line, it's out of the screen. So I can move things above or below the line or change their order. So for instance, if I wanted to take receipt number and make it be the first column, make store be second, right over here, then I could do that and it would rearrange them for me. Now I could also just drag the field over, right? I mean, if I have high enough user rights, I don't really need Page Manager for that. But if I want to add a column or take away a column, then I need to go into my Page Manager to do that. So if I add accept checks, which would be kind of weird, but all right. I don't know why I want to see the customer check status and a receipt history view, but whatever. There it is. And then I can right-click again, go back into Interface Page Manager. And of course, double-clicking an element in either version will send it above or below the line, respectively, right? Interface Page Manager. Now, there are some other small differences between 8 and 9. In 8, they appear in whatever order they felt like putting them in there. So, T, D, S, F, right? There's no particular order to those fields. It's just the order the programmer felt like adding them. Here, these are alphabetical. So, so it's kind of good. Now, I guess they're not always alphabetical. If I right-click and go into Page Manager and I choose to create a new page, and I choose to show tabs, right? Notice that the page, first off, it has everything in it, and it's back to being not alphabetical. See what I mean? So if you decide to have a new view, and you add a page to your list view, like I just did, right? What you want to do is you want to start off by grabbing this and dragging it up to the top, because you can grab the line. You don't have to move each element. You could grab the line, move it up to the top, sometime in our lifetime. Any day now. Now, if you leave all that stuff in your screen, you're going to create a kind of a situation. What I mean by that is that everything that's on the active screen, now this has one column, right? Now I could right-click and go back in here and interface, and now everything's alphabetical. So now I could find receipt number. If I want to find receipt number, I can just go down to the R's and I'll find receipt number. But everything you leave into the screen in the active view, it ends up being queried out of the Oracle database in version 9. Now version 8 doesn't have an Oracle database, so the elements on your screen do not speed up or slow down the operation of Retail Pro. In version 9, the elements on your screen do speed up and slow down the operation of Retail Pro. So the more elements you have, the slower Retail Pro goes, the longer the query takes to return all those elements. Does that make sense? And we could go further and I could design this, but there's no point in designing this because I'm going to get rid of it. So I'm just going to right-click, go back to Interface, Page Manager. I'm going to say, take the page one and delete it. Don't show the tabs anymore, and OK, and we're back to having the one screen design. So now, as you can see, there's two different modes to Page Manager. In this mode here, it just manages the pages. That's all it does. There's nobody in or out. There's no fields. Show the captions and add the page or not. However, in a form view, in an item box, you have a list, and the Page Manager from list mode applies to that box. So actually in form view, there are two different versions of Page Manager in the same screen. So within the box, the list Page Manager applies and works the same way, and you can add fields by putting them above the line. All right, so any questions on Page Manager, what Page Manager does? Excellent, excellent, good answer. Okay, so Page Designer, and really Page Designer that's the big share, right? That's the lion's share of designing is Page Designer. So when we go right-click here, Interface, Page Designer, it opens up the palette. So there's a little designer palette, and in there's a lot of functionality that we'll go through some of it. The first two buttons in here probably are the most important buttons. So the first button, upper left corner, and it still doesn't matter which version you're in. Nice. That's interesting, isn't it? So for those of you out there that like to play around with things, if you got both version 8 and version 9 open, it will hide the designer palette if you switch from one to the other in the middle of the webinar, just as an FYI. I don't think that anybody's going to really face that problem except me. But anyway, the first button here is called Fields, and this is where you find your fields. So if I wanted to add something to this screen, it would be in this list. So if I wanted to add, well, let's get something decent. Well, all right, maybe reference doc number or something that's just the least decent. So reference doc number would be the referencing number from if you avoided the transaction. So I just took that field and I just dragged it out, literally. So you can just go into the list here, find a field that you want, left click, drag, drop it into the little grid points. So you want to drop it into some place where it can go. So for instance, if I go like this, delete it, and I take that same field and I drag it in and I hold it over the top of this, it won't drop in there. You can't drop it into the item section, right? And it's not possible to put something over the top of the items. So that box is its own little value. But anywhere where the grid points are, you can certainly put it anywhere you want. So now, some of these fields that we see in here actually are in little groups. So this is your group, this is the fields in the group, and these are the extra fields that we don't have. If I wanted to add a field to this comment group here, I would just find the field I want and I would just double click it. So I would double click it, it would be in the group. And you see it, you saw it got added right there on the left side there. And if I double click it again and take it out, it goes away. Now, this box here, obviously we designed it, we put the word comments on top, so we pushed the bevel point over to just reveal the field number. There's no point in having the word comment 3 times. It's kind of redundant. So, little tricks like that, shall we say. So this is your field box. Your fields box is your first button, and it's where you find things. And in here, you can make a new group. Like here's one I made, obviously. So I could click New up at the top. It says Group 9, Name 9. If I want to go into Name 9 and call it whatever, I could call it whatever. I could go find some fields, and I could add those fields to that group. Then I could take that group, and I could drag that group into the screen, and it would drop in there. And then I had to move it around and put it where I want to put it. I could also obviously click on the field, and then I could click the little black X here, or I could hit the delete key on my keyboard, which is what I usually do, to be honest. But it doesn't show very well in a webinar. But you can delete it either way. You can take it right back off. You can also just click in here and delete the group, make it go away. Okay, so let's save that. Let's pop back over here to version 8 real fast. Go to Form View, right click, Interface, Page Designer, same thing. So again, Fields button, first button, same exact scenario, a little bit bigger, but that's all regulated by when you're editing, what size you make it, right? So again, you could create new groups here, and they're called groups over here. You could add things to them. One slight difference, I don't know if you noticed, a little subtle thing there. Let's delete this and do this over again. Let's go back and say delete group. In version 9, when we created a group, it just created a group. In version 8, it grabbed the first element. In version 8, you have to have one element, at least one element in the group. Not that it really matters, but just be aware if you're on version 8 that it's going to grab the first thing in the menu. So what you want to do is if you really want to have address fields in there, then go ahead and put your address fields in there, but then don't forget to take the weird field out. Because version 9 doesn't have that problem. Version 9 just lets you build a group, and it could be a blank group, and it doesn't care. Yeah, so there's a new group, and there's no fields in it, and version 9 doesn't care. It's totally fine with it. Yeah, saved it, doesn't care. All right, so let's move on in the page designer area, because that's an odd little area. So this here basically lets you grab fields and lets you create groups. Now, once you have fields and groups on your screen, like we have a bunch of fields and a bunch of groups here, then the second box here is the tab order. So in the tab order, you determine what you're going to go to. So right now, and it makes sense, I have the items at the top of the screen. So when I start a new transaction, I'm intending for the cashier to start by ringing items up and then optionally adding customers after, right? In this particular screen design. So the order of tabbing is to go to items. Nice. What did I just do with items? All right, we got a little feedback there. That's pretty exciting. So I'll put items at the top here. And then now, also understand that if you're tabbing, you have, in version 9, you have 2 levels. So if your focus is on the screen, so my focus is on comments, my focus is on shipping customer, my focus is on the screen, then you're setting the tab order of the screen. If your focus is on a group, you're setting the tab order of the group. Now, let's save this real fast. Let's go back over here, right click, and go into the same thing over here. Make sure we're all on the same page. Here, there's only one level. So there is the overall tab order. If I click on a group, and I click this, it doesn't care. It's the screen tab order. There's only one tab order. That's it. In version 8. They don't have multiple levels of tab order.
Let me know.
All right, so and if you have a question, go ahead and speak up and or throw it in the chat, either one, whatever works for you. Anyway, so back over to version 9. There's one more little caveat, though, to version 9 that I want to throw in, make sure that we're good with, and that is that we understand that there's tab order for the screen, that there's tab order for groups. In version 9, there's also this little dude here called a panel. So if I click that, it'll introduce what's called a panel. And in a panel, I could put things in the panel. I could take a field and put a field in the panel. And now, if I put a group, for instance, if I take this here and I put some fields in this, I put this in the panel, which it'll let me do. See? It's inside the panel and it's getting cut off because the panel's not big enough. Now what you've got is you've got the screen tab order, right? So that's the screen tab order. Then you've got the panels tab order, and then you've got the group tab order. Okay, that's a pain in the butt. I'm just going to tell you right now that screws your tab path up. What happens is the tab floats to the panel, gets lost on the panel for one tab. So if the cacher doesn't know that, basically the cursor vanishes. So generally speaking, I don't use panels, this function called panels, when I'm tabbing. I use them for display purposes, like to put an image and I want a border around it, so I put the image on a panel and I color the panel, right? That works really sweet, by the way. Or I want to put a header, or I want to make something look a certain way. Panels have a lot of uses. This isn't their best usage. I'm just going to tell you, putting a group on a panel is not a great usage. And if you do this, you may have to also color your font. So you can change the color of everything, right? But you'd have to make your font like silver or whatever. You'd have to make it vanish into the background, so to speak. But that really doesn't totally vanish. But you could pick a color that's on both palettes and make it work. But that's not where we are right now, anyway. So, all right. So we understand what fields does. That's really we've spent a lot of time in fields, creating groups and pulling in fields and moving them around and resizing them. So let's talk about some of these other buttons that are up here. Then we'll get into these resizing buttons, I guess. All these things up here do is they insert something. So let's start with the basics, like the finger here, and there's a finger that ties to these other two functions, but let's just start with these three basic ones right here. So that there adds a picture, that adds a label, and that adds a button. So if I add a picture, I click the button, it says what image do you want, and I don't even know if I have any images. Okay, I got something. There's a old Retail Pro logo. Well, we'll use a newer one. Here we go. Okay, it drops it in, and boom, I have this little graphic that I can now move around and put anywhere I want to. It's a little large. Obviously, it doesn't respect scaling. But so I could go put a picture, I could put a logo on the screen, I could do something like that if I want to, right? I could also just click the little A and add a text box, and then it would just say whatever I tell it to say, right? So I could put a little instruction on the screen if I wanted to, right? I could say, hey, this is a, or I could delete a column header. I could delete this word tax area, and I could write in my own version of that and put it over the top. Does that make sense? So that's just adding a label to the screen. You can also add a memo. Since we're on the label thing, I should point out that 2 over here is add a memo, and a memo is a box. So you could type in here, you know, again, whatever you want. Now the difference is this here would wrap if we were to make this big enough, you see. So there's the box, and if we reshape it like that, you'll see it wraps and does normal, character. But this could be bigger, and this could be a set of instructions or something that you need to remind the cashier of, and you can put it wherever you want. I'm going to delete that out of there. The button one, if we click add a button, it says what's the function you want to apply, right? So you go down and find, let's say I want an item discount or something, right? We could go in here and select item discount, click OK. We have a button. We move button wherever we want to put button. So if I wanted to have my button be right there, I could move this over like that. I could bring my button up and resize it a little bit so I could see the text. Now, the default font size there is not good, so you'd want to be increasing your font size up.
Pretty good.
A little bit to make it a little bit more presentable. You know what I mean? So that might be overkill. Let's just see here. Let's pick red. Probably not going to keep it anyway. Right now I picked red, but it's not showing in red.
I do seminar.
The computer, yeah?
Yep.
So the reason it's not showing in red is because there's no items on here. In order to do an item discount, you have to have an item, right? So you have to click new, and you'd have to put an item on there. So if I grab an item and throw it on there, then it shows up red, and then I could click that. It would take me back up to the item and open the item discount box, which this is old. This is the old item F5 button from the DOS version. It's still here in both versions. You can press F5 on any item, and it gives you a bank of fields that lets you type in a discount % or whatever. So, all right, now if we go back in here, right-click, go interface. Now that's also a slight difference. Notice that the page designer is grayed out. That's because I'm in an active transaction. In version 8, I can right-click and go into the page designer in an active transaction. In version 9, I can't. I have to cancel my active transaction. I have to be in a regular form view in order to access the designer mode. So just be aware that it's a slight change. It's something to do with the way that Oracle and Retail Pro have a relationship. It won't let us design the screens while we're in a transaction. All right, so the basic ones are pretty straightforward. We'll get to this one on the left here in a minute, but these ones on top, what they do is they add functionality. So if I wanted to, I could take the image, right, and I could give it a name. And that's actually the button one. Let's just skip that. Let's go back to the image for a second. So here's our image, right, and the image is a little large, so let's make it a lot smaller and drag it back up. Now, once I add the image and I put it wherever I want to put it, let's put it right there. So I've added this image and I place it where I want. It's not to scale, but who cares? I could double click it, and when I double click it, I now get this little properties thing that allows me to make it have a function. So if I wanted to go to the same function we were on before, item discount, boom. That's now an item discount button. So that button will act the same as any other. You see it turns into a little button click thing. My mouse does. It changes. And if I were to go start a new transaction and again add an item, I should show up so that I could use that. And so here it goes, boom, and let's click the little button, and it takes you back up to the item box like it did before. So, yep, there you go. Cancel that transaction, say yes. Right-click, interface, page designer. Okay, same thing's true. The same trick we just did here with a picture, we could do with text. That's what this A up here is. So I add something, I say space, item disk. And I put some spaces in there because I want it to be prettier. So there's my little field. Okay, so if I change the font size on this, so let's take this to like Arial and bold and you know, I don't know, 24, right? Okay. Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what's going on with that. A little feedback out there someplace. Testing. Okay, I think I took control of that again. I apologize for that. I'm not sure where that's coming from out there. Trying to manage that as best as possible. All right, so here we've got the thing added, we've got it bigger, but what the other things you would do to it is change the color in the background. That's where the spaces really help out. By adding those little spaces into that line, it gives you that better look to it, you know what I mean? So you could also change the font. Obviously, we could change the font color too. So I could go back in here and change this to be red. It's going to look pretty weird, but so that's a button. I created my own button there. I probably should put another space on the end of that, but it works the same way. See, it opens up the same box. When I click on that, it opens up that box on that item. Even though this is a former transaction, that function still works. So anyway, let's go back into Page Designer here. So these buttons here, they're just modified versions of these. They just give additional functionality to that image or that text. The first little button there just adds a background. So here, if you click this and we put this in there, that one's got better. You see it just adds a background. Now that background is a small background compared to the screen, so you see on the bottom how it's repeating. And then the next button just deletes that background. You know, the right background can be amazingly cool, I will tell you, but most backgrounds are too busy. You got to be really careful about picking the right picture. You know, it's got to be simple, and it's got to suggest. One of the best ones I think I saw was a bike shop setup. It was a white background with just a picture of a bike. It was almost a silhouette, and you couldn't see the bike because the item box and the tender box and all the other stuff that's on the screen. But you could see enough of it that your eyes filled in the gaps, if you see what I mean. So it was pretty cool, actually. It suggested a bike while not actually interfering with the transaction. All right, so the rest of these things down here, these have to do with the organizing your fields. So like here, if these here were out of line, right? Let's say that they were like this here. So, and I wanted to make these line up a little better. I could click on here, hold the Shift key down. The Shift key allows me to highlight more than one field. So while holding down a Shift key, I can click on more than one thing. Now, it's important, I'm going to back up and do this again. It's important to click on the anchor point first. So I'm clicking on the void item button. That's my anchor point. That's what I'm aligning to, if that makes sense. So then I hold the Shift key down, click on the next one, click on the next one, and then I can say align top, right? And I can say equal horizontal spacing, and I can put that thing right back where it looks good without trying to eyeball it, because there's no way you could eyeball it. Now, you can also do things like here. I could take this field here. I could take this field here. Let's screw this one up. I could take this field here, anchor to it, click on the other one with the Shift key. Then I could say make that be equal width. Make them be the same, right? And I could do as many as I wanted at once for that one. Okay. So all these fields do up here, they basically align. They all align some aspect left, right, top, bottom, vertical or horizontal. And then this is the same width. The reset level position does not really apply. If I need to make them the same height, what I do is I just look at the height of the field. And then I click on the other one and I make it be the same. So I can just type in there a different height, see that one change. So if I type in 90 here, you'll see the field change, right? And if I type in 120, it goes back to being the right height. All right. Let's see, let's fix something like that. All right, so you see that down in the bottom here now, this whole section down here, these are the values. These are the characteristics, the properties of the given field you're on. So if I click on a button, it has less properties than a group does, right? So I can change the font here, the height, the width, now, really important ones here is the top and the left. That's the distance from top, and that's the distance from left. I don't know what the unit of measure is, but they all use the same unit of measure. So if you want them to both be the same, obviously if we click here, you see that's 442 from left, and that also is 442 from left. But the distance from top changes, because one's down farther on the screen, right? So when you get into subtle like differences and or aligning fields, let me see if I can show you an example here of what I'm talking about. Let's pop out of a receipt for a second. Let's go to inventory. In inventory, sometimes we have boxes that are similar to but not the same as a group. Let's see if we got anything like that. Yeah, all right. So if I was trying to line up and I don't have, there's an example right there. Okay, so if I was going to line up this price cost information box on the right with this price level group on the left. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this, but to my eye, those two boxes, they don't look like they line up on the top. So let's go right click, let's go to Page Designer. Let's say we're going to take this one here, anchor to that point right there. Let's get this out of the way. Hold the Shift key down, click on this one right here, and let's say align to top. Didn't move, did it? They're still not aligned, are they? So with these things here, with these boxes, there's a border around them that you can't see. So in this case here, if I wanted to, I need to kind of cheat that up, right? That's where this comes in handy, right? Because I could say 155, for instance, and I could cheat that up. Now that actually doesn't look bad. I got kind of lucky on that edit, but now it looks like it might be 1 point low, but if you see, it's a lot closer than it was. Now it's not technically aligned, right? If we were talking aligned, you see that the dots are vanishing, and there's a border around that. So there's some subtle differences in how you align things. And you can see also here a good usage of the panel. So the item details tab is where I would enter product descriptions and information, right? And then the price levels, the pricing screen is where I would enter prices if I had multiple price levels, right? So I'm typically not entering this product up here. I'm typically not tabbing through those fields. So we used a panel here to give it a little accent, right? Make it look pretty. You can also do tricks with the panels, like, for instance, this purchasing box and this price cost information box over on the right here. They have that band on the top. They have that caption, basically. You could use a panel to mimic a caption if you wanted to give a box similar functions, right? I could take a panel, I could insert a panel, I could put the panel over the top of the box like that. Now, the only thing you can't do is you can't make it left justified, but you could make the thing have the same color. You'd have to look up and see what the color was, but because you could go to custom here and you could make it be the same. I'd have to go look at the numbers and all that. I'm not going to do that. And then you could make the font be the same too, right? So now you could click into the font and you could make the font be, you know, teal and bold and Arial and whatever size it is, say 12. It's not 12, it's bigger than that, but you see what I'm going. I could make these look really, really similar if I wanted to with a panel. But those are just some stupid panel design tricks. All right, so let's talk about groups real fast. So the group properties are a little more complex, as you can see. So you've got the caption font, you've got the label font. So the word purchasing is caption. The word lead time is label, right? So font is the data. That's the value that would appear in the box, right? Those are the three different things you have. You have the caption color, you have the color of the box, and you have the label background color, right? So now, if I create a new box, let's go in here. Let's say we want to make a new one of these, and we're going to just add some stuff to it. It's going to be a mouse challenge there for a minute. I drop that into the screen. It does not look the same as my boxes on the screen, does it? So this box here looks notably different, in fact, than the box that we have on the screen. So I can go ahead and say align left, adjust the width, boom, boom, right? That's easy. And then I could, if I wanted to, review this properties here and set them here. But actually, there's a nicer trick. Again, anchor, click on the one that's correct, hold the shift key down, click on the one that is the new one, and go through these properties like you were reviewing them, but don't review them. Just press enter. Just accept them. So open each one and press enter. That's all I'm doing here. Just going popping through, saying, yep, that's what I want. It all looks good. Thank you very much. And now you see that box on the bottom left looks the same as the purchasing box. So what I've done here is I've adopted, by going through and just opening and accepting the default one, the one I anchored to, right? I've accepted all those changes over to the other box. Nice little trick, by the way. You can do that with fields too. There's less fields to mess with, but you can do it with fields too. All right, so let me see if I can even do this one. All right, so the field is moving, right? But the mouse is not. So Control and the arrow keys moves your fields around, moves your elements around. Again, very handy if you're doing some doc designs or screen designs. Works in both, by the way. And you want one-dimensional movement. I want to move this down or up without losing my alignment. I want one-dimensional movement. If I grab it with the mouse, there's no way I'm going to be able to get this to drop in exactly where I want. I can get pretty close, but then you're going to have to go back and say, you know, align this left to be sure it's actually aligned. So if you just want to move something around a little bit, up or down or left or right, Control and the arrow key. That's what lets you move something up or down, or left or right, without messing the whole thing up, basically. So on that same token, we know that Shift allows us to highlight multiple fields, correct? Shift also, so if we click on something or multiple elements, Shift also lets us resize. So Shift left arrow here allows me to make this field shorter. Now, it can also, if the field's appropriate, like this one up here, this one's more appropriate, it can also make it shorter or taller. Now, of course, a group has labels. The labels determine the height of the group, right? So I can do a shift down arrow here. It's just going to ignore me because there are labels in there that are already determining the height of that group. All right, hopefully I'm not putting everybody to sleep yet. Hopefully we're still all awake and not like drooling out the side of our mouth, but I get it if you are. I mean, totally get it. It's pretty cool stuff, but it could be a little dry. All right, so let's see, is there anything else about the page designer that's really cool and exciting that I should probably share? Yeah, not really. That's pretty much it for the page designer. All right, so this button here vanishes the properties. I never use it, by the way. I always want to see my properties. And then there's this button here that I didn't do, but I'll do it. That gives you this thing here. So what this does is it gives you mouse controls over your cursor, right? I can go up and down with the cursor, but it also opens up those other two, which I'm not fond of. So here, if I put my cursor there, I can move around now with these things with the mouse, right? That's kind of handy. But I don't really need a numeric keypad to pop up, which should be happening there, but apparently it's not. So not sure why. Virtual machine. Now there has been a few times when I've used that in a more creative way, like on an item section on the receipt. Let's just go back to a receipt. I have set this up like where we would take the item section and make a little shorter like that, and then add that off to the right and cut it off. It's a nice little trick. If you want the arrows, you want to have that functionality, but you don't want them to click on the keyboard. What you can do is depending on your screen design, you got to be careful because screen design is all based on the resolution. So you got to kind of remember that you're designing to the smallest monitor you have in the system, unless you want to maintain more than one screen design. And there's by no means do I want to maintain more than one screen design. I've seen people do it, and you can do 2 pretty well, but you get to 3 and 4 and 5, it starts to become ridiculous. So I'm going to say don't go there. You could do a point of sale, and you could do a, an office. I've seen a lot of people do that. So here you see, I mean, if that was like that, and I set this thing basically off the screen like that, right? And then I brought my items thing up to it. It's a pretty slick trick. Then you get some of the functionality without having to risk the other functionality being a problem. Now, if you have different monitors that have different sizes, that's not going to work. You have to have all the point of sales have to be the same size, running the same resolution. And everybody knows what I mean by that, right? I'm just going to make sure we all know that when I right-click my screen in the background and I go to screen resolution inversion in Windows 7, it tells me what I'm running on my resolution. And I need to be running the same one. Most point of sale monitors run 1024 by 768. They don't run very high resolution because you want big, pretty easy font to move around. I mean, so obviously I've got a bigger monitor here, and I've got both version 8 and 9 loaded next to each other, and I need a little more space. So okay, back to view our little list here and see what we got going. So we've got the page designer, which is the big one, really. And then the layout manager. And the layout manager is not really terribly exciting, so I won't spend a great deal of time on it. It exists in both views. So here, if I go right-click and interface, no, it actually doesn't exist in that one, does it? Let's go list view. See, does it exist here? Yeah, that's what I thought. So layout manager lets you just rename your layout, right? So I could copy that and call that Jeff's, that's really all it does. Just lets you name your layouts or rename them. So now it's also in the form view, both versions. So you have the layout manager, and again here, these are all different layouts, right? So I'm on standard 1024, but I could go to like EasyPOS here, and it would change my screen. Not sure there's a great deal of use for that, but okay. Now in version 8, under options, there's a model workstation. So in this case here, if I wanted to copy see on the bottom it says WS1 is my workstation number. If I wanted to copy workstation 1's layouts 2 workstations 2 or 5, I could check those off and check off layouts, and it would, when I click copy, it would then copy these screens to those workstations, and they all 3 would look the same. Now, to do this, you have to have everybody out of Retail Pro. They got to be at the main menu or completely out. They can't be on a receipt. They can't be on inventory. They can't be on a receiving voucher. They have to be to a place where they're not tying up the screens. So that's the easiest way to make everybody in the same location have the same screen, if that makes sense. All right, so and also let's just touch on this here. Also in version, let's get off the network. Let's go here locally, version 8, and Retail Pro, and here's our workstation folders. I could also just go in here and grab this layout folder, copy this here, right? I can move over to another workstation folder of my choosing, delete or rename. I would say rename this. And if I rename this here and paste in that layout folder from the other workstation, I just moved my screens over. So I could do it manually too. And of course, the reason I wanted to show you this on version 8 is because I wanted to be able to show you how it changes in version 9. And version 9 is a little bit different animal on that one. So let's go take a look at version 9. So in version 9, it's different because, yep, there we go. So in version 9, let me just give you an idea. This is a sandbox, so I don't really have multiple users. I don't even have actually, I mean, it's got a computer. It's inside a laptop, but this PC is not real. It's a virtual machine. So, so in real life, when you go look at a version 9, you're going to see user accounts inside this folder, and you're going to see loose files. Now, in version 8, the loose files are the layout. In version 9, the loose files are not the layout. They are the default to build the layout. See, so if I take this here, actually, let's get out of Retail Pro 9. So let's leave Retail Pro 9. Let's say I want to update the layouts in version 9, and I'll say I have 10 workstations, okay? And I want all 10 workstations, and so I have 10 workstations, and each workstation I have, let's say I have 50 employees, and a good number of them has signed on to each of my 10 workstations, so I have potentially up to 50 folders like this one here, the one that says Jeff and Tim and all that. I've got like 50 of those, up to 50 on each of the 10 workstations. And I want to update all those to look the same, right? So there's one of 2 scenarios. Either you're managing the layouts locally on each computer or you're managing them across the network. If you're running a network installation, you're pulling your shortcut from the network drive, then you're running off the network. And so what you would do is you would take the new layout, this one here, copy. You would find the master layout folder and you would rename it. So I'm going to rename this one, what is today? Wow, 24th, 07-2418. And then I'm going to go ahead and right-click and paste. And where did it go here? Is it at the bottom? Did it not paste? That's pretty annoying. Okay, we'll try this again. Copy. Paste. There it is. Okay, I'm going to change this here to say layouts. All right, so at this point, this new layouts folder I just created, it does not have, it has the images that using for some of the menus, and it has the files. But there's no sysadmin folder in here. There's no Jeff folder. There's no, right? So if I now launched Retail Pro 9, get my doc designers out of the way. Got to get over to doc designer in a minute. Yeah, gotta love the old load screen. All right, so it has to now build a profile for sysadmin. I signed in as sysadmin. Now I'm in, so let's go back and look at the folder. And it added this folder all by itself. So what we do on a network, we have server, right? And we have potentially workstations right around the place. And they all connect via a little router someplace, right? So what we do is we take the layout folder and do exactly what we did. We rename the existing layout folder. We create a new layout folder up here. And then we go around to each person's layout folder on the network in each machine, and we just rename it. Boom. Now, when they launch Retail Pro, since there's no layout folder on this one here, it has to go out over the network and find the new layout folder and copy that back to and create a profile. So it creates a new layout folder in here and adds a profile in it. But it does not add any files. There's no default. It can't build layouts locally. It has to go to the server to get the layouts. Therefore, everybody gets the same screen, right? I don't have to go like update 50 profiles on each machine.
Hey, Jeff, can I interrupt for a sec?
Yep, please.
Betty needs to step out onto the floor, as do I now at this point. So are you going to be recording? You're recording this?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we will catch you later when we see it.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it.
No problem. Bye.
All right, bye. So in version 9, I'm going to warn you guys that version 9 layouts can get they can get a skew. They can get off. They can get really bad. So that you could sign on to Workstation 2 and have one layout. You could go to sign on to Workstation 1. You could have a completely different layout. So if you don't actively manage these in version 9, they will go adrift on you, and they will turn into a mess. So you want to kind of keep that in mind as you go into version 9. There is one other aspect of version 9 that I will bring up, and that is this here. And I'm not encouraging this. I'm just informing you that it exists, okay? Because I don't actually endorse this, but it is cool and some people like it. So within the layout folder in version 9, by default, we would have our default layout files, right? And if we only have files in there, and there are supported images, whatever, then everybody gets the same layout, period. Doesn't matter where you sign in, server, any workstation. If there are no layouts on the workstations, and this is the only layout on the server, everybody gets the same one. That's my first go-to plan right there. Then I manage access through security, right? If you're not a buyer, you don't need the CPOs. Doesn't matter which workstation you're on. Okay. Now, if I set up a profile up here though that said Jeff, right? And Jeff went and signed on at a given workstation, like down here, it would in fact create a new layout folder. It would go up and look at the server. Finding a Jeff folder would copy the Jeff folder down into the layout folder. So what does that mean? That means if you put, like, you know, an admin person's personal profile up on the server, so if I rename the files up here, if I rename this folder here, get rid of this old layout folder, but I copy that layout up to the new profile, I've changed the default. Everybody who signs in out in workstation land is going to get the new layout, but the admin people who had existing screens that they want to keep, they're going to get their old screens republished. Does that make sense? So they have like a roving profile. It's now going to repush those back to the workstations. I don't have to manually copy them back. I just got to manually copy them into the server. And once they're copied into the server, they'll be pushed out to the workstations as needed. But I am going to warn you, if you want to manage more than one layout, in fact, let's back up that a minute. If you're going to manage layouts, even just one, in version 9, you need to have a machine and a user profile. I don't care if it's sysadmin, I don't care if it's your name, whatever you want that profile to be. It could be store, store example, whatever, store screen. You got to have a user that you sign on as that is that profile that exists on a given machine. And you always do your work there and you push out from there to other places. Now, if you're going to do more than one screen, you're going to manage more than one screen, you need more than one test environment on your master workstation, right? You sign in as admin and you sign in as a POS guy. I don't care. And you then keep all your master screen designs in one place and you always push out from there to other profiles. That's the only way to make it be successful. Otherwise, you will drop the ball at some point and you'll have a mess. And then you'll be cleaning it up. Okie dokie. All right. So, yeah, I think we're good then. Any other questions about screen designs? If not, I'm going to push on to Doc Designer. Actually, there was a little thing here I wanted to touch on. There was a message that was emailed a little while ago. We should just go ahead and knock that down, right? So if we're in inventory and we want to see both global and local UPC together, right? Here's my global UPC. We would use the page manager in list mode here, not mood, but we would go into interface page manager and we would find the local UPC, which would be surprisingly in the L's probably. Could be wrong on that, but, and again, maybe not. So local UPC, boom, double click it, it's above the line. I can now drag it over next to this here if I want. And while we're on this topic, version 9, not version 8, version 8 doesn't have this problem. Version 9 has 2 UPC fields. And in system preferences, this is not a webinar about preferences, but in system preferences under local and merchandise, you can choose to force them to be the same, right? So down here it says force them to be the same, basically, force local to follow it. And you can turn off the ability to edit local or leave it turned on. The only issue you have with that is if you make a mistake on one. So like right here, if I was to go in and delete this here, nice. Looks like our SIDs are based on that. I'm going to go ahead and say yes. So what I wanted you to see though is that it did not delete the local. Now, if you type in here, you see it automatically syncs. So if you put a size 8 UPC on a size 6, I just put the size 6 over the top, right? But if you really screwed up and you need to delete it, and you need to delete both, then you're going to have access to edit that field, because if you have to delete it, you have to delete them separately. So that was just a little thing that was emailed out to me that I wanted to make sure that I touched on. It's kind of weird, but true. So, all right, so let's talk about doc designing, I guess, right? There's a lot in Doc Designer, so hopefully we're all still awake. I don't know about you, but I had to switch to my stand-up desk, which was nice. And this was Colette asking that very question. So hopefully, Colette, I just answered that question, even though you asked it about 15 minutes ago, and I didn't see the little question mark on my left panel here. But hopefully, I did answer that question now. Oh, on the voucher too. Let's take that's right. The email did ask about the voucher. Let's take a quick look at that. I'm not sure that if the voucher has both. So all documents, no matter what they are, you can access both UPC fields if from the document you were to use choose edit items, right? So if we go into a new one and we use choose edit items, and that takes us out to inventory, well then we're just in inventory and we're editing inventory screens, right? So we're certainly going to be able to do it there. And I just did it in inventory, so I don't need to show you again that it's possible. So right-clicking here though and going to interface page manager again, if we have, there's local UPC. So if we go down here and see if global UPC exists, and it may not. Yeah, see, not even here. So global UPC should be after, from, ASN, and before the hard V's. Hard versus SO. I don't know what that is actually. I'm kind of curious. But documents seem to use local UPC. They don't use global. Whereas the PI uses physical inventory uses global. That must be a customized field. We must have renamed that at some point. I don't recognize that field at all. So anyway, so good news is we can do it in inventory. Bad news is we can't do it on a voucher. There's no way to do it in a voucher on the voucher screen. Any chance that there is? Let me see if this is possible. No, yeah, see, it's just not there. You can also check under UPC. Sometimes the UPC itself is just called UPC, but no, it's not here either. You can do some tricks, and of course I can't see anything here that really qualifies, but sometimes you can add item level fields to the screen in the background, and that's a pretty cool trick. When you click on it, it shows you the picture, a lot like an image, like a picture. It would be the same as adding a picture. If you added an item image like that, right, then you had 10 items on the screen, well, it's only going to show the one you highlight, right? I mean, that's how that one would work. So I apologize, but we can't have both UPCs on this document here. You could put them into a doc design. So let's talk. I think we can do that. Let's go find out. So that's kind of a good segue. So we go back into our doc designers, and that one is the version 8 one, and this is the version 9 one. So let's stick to version 9, since this version 8 doesn't have 2 UPCs, so it'll be kind of irrelevant. All right, so if I went into a doc design out here, this is one of the ones that BHD does. In the doc designer, both doc designers are roughly exactly the same, by the way. One of the first things I'm going to point out is that on the top you have this thing called preferences, and you want to make sure that your display advanced properties is turned on. Like, you don't even want to be in here messing around if you don't have this turned on. So, and I'll show you what I mean is, like, if I click on a field, here's my properties of the DCS field, right? So let's go flip this off now. Click on DCS and you see the difference. You lose a lot of functionality on positioning the field and setting a lot of values about it. So pretty much for me, that has to be on all the time. Now, on the right-hand side, we've got the properties, which we just looked at, kind of. We got to get into a little deeper, but there's 4 tabs: properties, miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is named wrong. It really should be called insert, because that's all it does. But this is where you can insert things. You can insert labels, memos, rich edits. Rich edits are like memos, but they take their formatting from wherever you copy them from. So if you edit them in Word and it has 2 different font sizes, it's going to adopt those from Word. Shapes, lines, boxes, circles, right? Images, dates, times, you know, barcodes, page numbers. So you can insert all this stuff on the miscellaneous tab. Design tree, very useful area. This lets us see what's where. Sometimes you can see a field and you go to click on it and you can't click on it. Let me see if I can even copy this here. Right, there we go. No, I intentionally screwed up. But see, I can click on this. I can click on this. I can click on this. When I try and click on that, though, I can't click on that, can I? It clicks on the field that's in the background. So what's going on here? Usually this is unintentional, but in this case I did this intentionally. I pasted this into the wrong level. Okay, so let's click on this field here. Okay, this field here is highlighted right here. You see that it's inside this thing here called a band, right? But this field right here, it's next to the band. In fact, it's underneath this band here, right? So, really important point. If you're taking a field and you're copying it, you need to left click on and highlight your target first, then right click and paste it in there. And then you'll get it in the target. That, by the way, is a really excellent trick, generally speaking, for the doc designer. If I need to add another field here, I could certainly go to this last tab here, and I could grab any field, and I could drop it in there. But it's going to be totally different. The formatting of the field, the size, the font, the positioning, all that stuff's going to be totally different. Now I'm going to have to review all that information and then set the field, the new field, the same way. The other option is to take a field like global UPC, copy it, paste it into your band of choice, right? Go over to the properties, go to the data field, open up the data field, and change it into anything you want it to be. Right, so that's a lot better. So here's local UPC, right? So I just changed that global UPC to be a local UPC. Now, of course, I could click on this, hold the shift key, click on the other field, say at the top here in the little drop down, align top, right? I could even say adjust width. Then I could click up here on this one, click on this one, and I could say align left. Then I could highlight those, click on this one, and say adjust width. So notice I had to anchor to the one that I wanted to adjust the size on, right? Now I could also click on the column header here for on-hand quantity, and click on the field, hold down the control key, hit the right arrow, slide them over together, still in alignment, both vertically and horizontally. Click on this field, click on this field, click on this one, holding the shift key, do a control left arrow, right? Now if I did all this to create this printout that would show me and compare these two fields, I would need to, of course, name these appropriately, right? So this is just a label. These are just label fields. You can see at the top here, this is label 1, that's label 9, whatever, right? So I would just go in here and say this is local UPC, right? And that would actually work for me. Global UPC often has the name just UPC. Sometimes it actually says global UPC, but local always says local. So for me, since I do so much work with Retail Pro, I would be fine just to say UPC. But for the most part, I think you'd probably prefer, most people would prefer to have it say global and local like that. So we certainly could, you know, create a doc design very easily that would show us both fields. And of course, if you were to use this, so let's go ahead and say File, Save As, and let's call this, you know, UPC list. And let's hop into inventory. So we would go into inventory. We would filter for, you know, whatever section we wanted, right? And then we would click print, and it should come up with our little list here. And UPC list is right there. Click OK. Now here, you're going to have to say all listed records. Otherwise, you're only going to have the one record on the top, right? The one that's highlighted. So I say all listed records here. And then I say preview. That's enough. We don't need to see the whole list, right? I don't have that many items in inventory, but I don't think we all want to wait for that. Now, of course, here, if I wanted to find things that didn't balance, right, that didn't match, what I would do is I'd export this out to Excel, right? And once it was in Excel, I'd just do a little equation that said, you know, does this equal that, right? Or this minus that, and I get zeros for everything except the ones that were off. So, and this is not a webinar on Excel, so we're going to abandon that right there. So hopefully, Colette, that answers enough of the question to get you started in the right direction. Certainly, you can always give us a holler if you have other questions or concerns. All right, so back to the task on hand. And thank you actually for the question and the email ahead of time. The more things we have to talk about and the more questions we get, the better it is for everybody. So copying a design, a couple of ways you can do that. Obviously, you could just open up a design, any design. So like I just did. In fact, what am I talking about? I went into inventory, right? So, yep, not seeing inventory. There it is. I went in and grabbed a given document. I opened it up. I then said File Save As, right? Boom. I copied a document. Both doc designers, both version 8 and version 9, pretty much identical. There's only one slight difference we'll talk about in a minute with the schema names, but they both lack Control-Z. They both lack the function called undo. So if you're going to hack around in here, the first rule pretty much is copy the design. Now, the other thing you can do is that if you go into either folder, so we'll go into both here. So we're in version 9, so let's stick in version 9 for a minute. In version 9, on your whatever drive you're on, C drive, R drive, you're going to find a Retail Pro 9, then you're going to find a design folder. And inside your design folder, there's going to be a doc design folder. And in there is going to be every area that would contain doc designs. So vouchers would be in the voucher one, right? Receipts would be in receipts. This print job we just did would be here in inventory. So tags and listings from inventory are both in here. So if I wanted to, I could go in and find a given doc design like that, right? And I could just copy this here and go paste and give this a new name. So there's Jeff. There's a design called Jeff now, right? So we go back in here and we click print, and that design shows up. So you could just copy the Windows file and make a new version of it, and then go edit it, right? That's the simplest. Now in version 8, is almost exactly the same. In version 8, the only difference in version 8 is that here's our version 8 root directory. It's like the Retail Pro 9 directory we just looked at. In version 8, since Oracle is not present and the database is being managed by Retail Pro, we have to go into the RPro folder. That's where the database is. So we go one more layer down, but then we have a design folder and a doc design folder and all the other folders, just like before. So there's the inventory, and then there's a count sheet, and I could copy that, and I could give it a new name, just exactly the same way. So except for the RPro folder, it's exactly the same path. And that's just because in version 9, like here's version 9, and here's Oracle. And the data is actually in the Aura data folder. This is where the data resides, in RPro ODS. So in version 9, it's separate because we have this thing called Oracle, and we have to query Oracle anyway. Let's get back to doc design. We could wax on about all that forever, and that's not why we're here today. All right, so copying and design, pretty easy. Changing fields, we just looked at that, right? So copy a field, paste it into the right band, then use your advanced properties, use your data field name to change that into anything you want. Now, this is a version 8 doc design. This is a version 9 doc design. So let's point out a subtle difference between the two. All right, so both of these doc designs are highlighted on the same kind of count sheet design, slightly different design, but both of them in both designs, I'm highlighting the same field. Now, on the right-hand side, you see the captions, they're the same, right? In fact, the field name is the same, RERTI field 3. Both the same caption. Look at the data field name. Data field name is very different. Version 8 uses like words. Description 2, that's the schema name in version 8, DESC2. Exactly verbatim, capital D, lowercase e, SC, number 2, no space. Schema names are extremely sensitive. I say that with an underline and a bold. In version 9, of course, you can see that the data field name is E2009. So in version 9, they abandoned the words and they went ahead and went with like alphanumeric field numbers, basically. So description 1 is 2008, description 2 is 2009, description 3 is 2010. You get it, right? So what does that mean? It just means that if you're ever bringing a design up from version 8 to version 9, and it says, you know, that right there, that in version 9 is not going to understand that. You're going to have to click this open, and you're going to have to map that back to its native field. You're going to have to map it back to description 2 and convert the schema name to the correct value. Not a big deal, but also understand that in doc design, it's not just fields that get mapped. Let me just go open up something a little more complicated, like a receipt. Right, so in here, certainly there's a UPC field that's an item field, right? But that thing exists in a band that is an item band. Now that's a general item band. That's a sub-child band of this parent band right here. And you see that this band is also mapped to the item's subset of data. So that mapping changes between V8 and V9 too. So just be aware that if you're playing around with a conversion, and some things you can convert easy, tag designs, no big deal. Like a minute to convert a tag design from V8 to V9. It prints exactly the same, looks exactly the same, works exactly the same. Receipts, very hard. So there's other functionality in receipts that change to make it really a challenge to move over. XZ out, probably the hardest single doc design there is. Would not recommend that. Definitely come to us. We have good designs for all these areas. So if you're going to do a complicated design, start with something that's got a lot of work in it that's already 99% done, and then put your final touches on it, if you know what I mean. So, changing formatting. Well, yeah, you can change the formatting on any of these things, right? So, that's just playing with your properties, right? So in here, if I wanted to make this be bold, or if I wanted to, I just come over here and start playing around with these things here, right? I can open the font window, and I could use the Windows font settings. I prefer them actually, or I could open the little plus sign here and open the frame, and I could go and play with all the settings that are in here, right? I could change the font size right there. Generally speaking, I do like opening this. I like that interface. I think we all do, right? So I could change the font and the size, and I could make it look different. Other tricks, you know, this description field sits in what's called a label, right? And a label sits in what's called a band, right? Okay. By default, the label has no value. I don't see the label when I do a print job, but you can give it weight. That's what the frame here, the frame weight allows you to give that thing weight. Now, why would I want to give it weight? Why would I want to see the label? That doesn't make any sense. Maybe, in fact, I want to put a little line between description 1 and description 2, right? So I could give this thing a right side line weight, and it would put a line right there at the end of description 1. Or maybe I want to put a little underline on there, or one on the top, right? Now I could also do that at the band level. So if I put a bottom line weight on the band, it's like underlining every item. Every single item gets an underline. That's very useful, by the way. Now let's also point out something that we kind of touched on in screen design earlier with the groups. But if I highlight a field and I then hold the Shift key and highlight another field, and then I go ahead and say open the font window and press enter, just accept the edits, I adopt the settings from the anchor field to the new field, correct? So that change I made on description 1 is now gone, and it's in favor of being back the way it was, right? Then, of course, I could save that if I wanted to, and I could pop back in here and say print. I think that's just which one is that? Is that this one here? Or no, that's this one here, isn't it? Find out. Yeah, all right, there you go. See the little line? I inserted a line at the end of description 1 that just is called description here right now, right? So I put a little line there, a vertical line at the end of that field to separate the two. If I wanted to, I could do that. And of course, had I selected more items, do you want to say, no, let's go print, UPC list all of the records, that's enough, I don't need, then it's going to show that line all the way down for every one, right? Okay, and again, hopefully everybody's still awake and coherent, possibly. I see that some of you guys are browsing other stuff. That's fine. I can see when you're not looking at me, by the way, just FYI. All right, you didn't know I could activate everybody's camera, right? No, that's not it. I can't. I can just see a little indicator. All right, so back to, right, so remapping, we're good on that. That's just the schema names and reformatting. Everything has formatting boxes on it, right? So advanced, detail bands, grid bands, other settings, remove a blank, right? There's a ton of stuff we could go over in there. So let's get some basics out of the way here. Both versions, if you hold down the Shift key, you can click on both things. And if you continue holding the Shift key, the left arrow, you can resize them, right? You can also hold the Control key and move them. So very important to know that you can move things around one-dimensionally or resize them. Now, notice that this movement is coarse. Basically, you see those little grid points in the background. It moves roughly 1 grid point. So if I need to cut the difference, and I do, the spacing between these. Now I could just go with I could just go with equal. I could say equal horizontal spacing, right? But if I wanted to eyeball it, I could also just go in here, highlight both those things, and say distance from left, and we could say it's 0.63 now. Let's say 0.67, right? So another good point, since I landed on the distance from left here, I'm going to click on the bottom. I'm going to click here on what I would call the document. That would be the same as going to the doc design tree. And if you were down inside here on a field, clicking on the top value, right? Focusing on the entire document, then go to properties and you can see what your unit of measure is. And it's important because the default is characters. When you get a doc design that Retail Pro probably made, they probably set the characters. And then when you click on a field and you look at the value, distance from left is 21.6. Well, 21.6 what? Well, characters, right? That's weird. So I set mine to inches mostly because I'm Western and we use inches. Certainly centimeters would be okay. Millimeters, I guess. Native is nice. If you really need a fine adjustment, go to native and you'll get a lot more increments. So if 0.67 was not good enough and 0.66 was not good enough, if I go to native, I'll get 3 or 4 points between that I can adjust to. On a document like this, you would never need that. But on a tag design that's maybe a 1/2 inch tall, maybe 3/4 of an inch wide, you very well could need that. If you're trying to squeeze a lot of stuff into a very small space, then that becomes really, really useful. Pixels, of course, if you're doing anything with pictures, you're going to want to put your unit of measure in pixels. And that's really not on our agenda or a checklist today, but that's kind of important, so I wanted to touch on it. All right, so what's a detail band? Let's take a look at a detail band. And this is a detail band right here. So a detail band repeats. That's what it does. So it repeats for as many times as there is data for it to repeat, right? So there's different kinds of detail bands. So a receipt carries a detail band, and let's take a look. Let's go ahead and open up a receipt design here, because on a receipt design there's actually different ones. So let's just open one here like that. Come down a little bit. Okay, so this is a detail band right here. Let's make that bigger. I don't know about you, I can't see it. So that's a detail band, right? The items have a detail band, and so this is going to print that item, first item, second item, third item, right? That's actually a general band. So let's go find the detail band. So what I've done here, there's your detail band. Then I put a general band in because I wanted to stack some fields together. So that's a child band. Then I put this band in here to do something. So this one here is set to, let's see here, align with top, right, remove of blank. And that's just a label. That's odd. I'm not sure what's going on with that design. Normally what this would be something like I want a discount, and I would put a discount line in there like that. And the discount line would insert when the item was discounted, and it would be removed, and the items beneath it would align with top, i.e. not taking up any space, right? So it inserts the third line when it's appropriate. It doesn't insert the third line when it's not appropriate. So but that's a common trick. So if we go up to the parent detail band, the receipt item section, right? That is a detail band, and everything in that band is going to repeat for every item on the receipt. Now let's go down a little further in the receipt, and that is not a good example. This thing here was brought up from version 8. So let's establish what's going on here. This is a V8 design. This is an old V8 design. In V8, the tender section was kind of the shotgun approach. Basically, put every tender in there, set it to align with top, remove blank, right? So put every single tender in the big stack. And what has values prints, what doesn't have values is removed. Not a bad approach. It worked well enough for version 8. In version 9, they changed that plan. So that's one of the reasons why you really can't take and this is I'm in version 8, aren't I? Yes, I am. That's why I have version 8 designs. So let's go back to version 9. Okay, so in version 9, let's see what we got here going. Okay, boom, perfect. So in version 9, there's the same thing. There's an item band, right? And there's a detail band in there. If we go up to the item section and we look at the properties, it's going to say detail, right? If we go down a little further, you see the tender section here is quite different. So here, these are the fields, this is the band. That's a detail band. So in version 9, all of those fields, the name of the tender, the change given, blah, 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 all these fields, they're all going to repeat for every individual tender. So if you use 10 Visa gift cards, then it prints 10 times. That's the deal. And the reason it's so tall, let's drop it back down. The reason it's so tall is because if it's not tall, then it cuts off the repeating detail. So you have to leave this tall. It doesn't print all that space. You don't see it in the printout, but you have to have this be tall enough that it can repeat over and over again. And usually this is tall enough because, like, cardholder name, that's only going to print on a credit card. So if you're split tendering with cash, that's going to go away. That's going to be removed, right? So you can see that you could get like 5-ish, 5 or 6 or 4, depending on what they are. You can get at least 5 and who split tenders more than 5 times in point of sale for real, right? So anyway, that's what's going on with detail bands. Detail bands are used to repeat things over and over again, and in many cases, and there's a good example right there of a detail band. Let's bring this back up to where we can see it. A detail band, so there's your detail parent band. Inside the detail parent band is what's called a band header. So that's a band type, right? And then beneath the band header is the actual items, which is an actual detail band also. But the detail band for the items has the data type, whereas the parent band here, I believe, does not. Yeah, see, it doesn't need a data type. It's just saying I'm the parent and this is a detail band, and beneath it I'm going to have a subset of data in a detail band. So you have to kind of understand roughly what those are. But there are other ones too. Let me grab something else. We're not going to spend much more time on bands because they're really boring. But here, this is a horizontal repeated detail band. So this one not only goes down, but it also goes to the right. So this tag here, printing to stock that is this size, would print one on the left and then one on the right. That's how we do split tags, right? And to take that theme a little further, this here was designed, so this here is a horizontal repeated detail band. It should be, actually. I'm not sure what's going on with that. That band type is not showing correctly. But what this should do is it should repeat right and down to print, 3 columns of barcodes. It's POS cheat sheet, basically. Kind of curious to see if it would work, because I don't know how it got set to general, but yeah, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. So with a document like this, you could filter for a group of items that are difficult to tag, right? Or too small to tag, and print this out for that given set of data, and have that at point of sale, and you'd have a cheat sheet. I don't endorse cheat sheets; they suck, kind of, at point of sale. But if you're going to do them right with a doc design. Don't stick tags to paper, right? Then if it becomes dog ear, just print another one. All right, back to our list here. So detail bands, grid bands. Grid bands, this may be the most complicated band thing that we do. And let me see if I have an example of something that I could show you already that might be better. Let's try, okay, yeah, these are both good examples here. Let's take this one first. All right, so here is a purchase order. And this is not really a good example of what I was looking for. So let's close that and see what else I have here that's, well, let's try this one and see what this is set to. Yep, that's not what I'm looking for either. Interesting. Okay, I know what's going on. Okay, so let me tell you what's going on as I grab this design from another place here. A grid band. The initial intent of a grid band was to create a grid. Sizes on top, colors down the side, right? And that's not a bad thing. That's a really cool thing, in fact. But the sort of side benefit that they sort of gave us or presented was that you could make what's called a lineal grid. And in the lineal grid, you could actually have the doc design enforce a sort over the items. So you could make the doc design have functionality that did not previously exist. Basically what what's going on with this thing. So I'm going to drop this in here, and we're going to go take a look at that. We're going to say open that one now. PO, boom. Okay, so this design here, obviously made for Squaw, but you see that the item band here, the item band right here is a grid band, right? But you notice that there are no column headers. So when you have a grid band and you highlight the grid band, and it says grid up here, obviously, you get this thing here on the bottom that says cross table info. And in a cross table info, you can open this up and you can say that I want this to be linear, right? Not a grid. I want it to sort by the style number, then by the attribute, and then typically by the item number or something to get down to the item level, right? And you can decide what things you want to have totaling or not. So if we pop back around in here and take a given PO, do I have any POs in this set of data here? I don't know. We'll find out. Oh, we got some stuff. Form view. All right. All right, fair enough. It's got some stuff, right? So let's go print all items, and we'll grab that one there and say preview. And hopefully it'll preview sometime in our lifetime. And we will zoom in on this a little bit because that's got to be way too small for me to see. All right, so when I look at this screen here, although the font's a little wacky, I'm not sure why, it's a virtual machine, but I think you can see that the description field, which is actually a style number, is not the primary sort because S does not come before M or 8. But the style number field, which is actually the description, that's the difference between the doc design and my data. B for Birkenstock comes before clean, which comes before knit, short sleeve, tailored, Italian, right? So B, C, K, that's the sort right there. So we said sort by description 1, which we've named style number in this doc design. So there's some functionality there that is very sweet, actually. And that's what a grid can do. Now, the grid can also do the other thing. It can create a grid, right? It can actually create a grid with sizes across the top and things down the side. That's the other value that a grid can do for you. See, do I have any purchase orders in V8? Preferably one that had form view that had, that's all right. Let's see. So let's try print and try this here. And preview all items, single PO. Excellent. All right. Right. So you get the idea here, right? So the sizes are across the top. This is lacking order quantity. Something's wrong either in the data or the design. I'm not sure which. It's got description 1 and 2 on the left. Then it's got the attribute, in this case home, because these are like jerseys, home versus away, as opposed to red versus white or something. And it gives you a grid. And it would go down and break down all the items from a given scale into the same grid, and then it would switch to the next one. So that's what a grid design is. But mostly I use them honestly more for sorting elements like this than I do for the actual grid function. Very few people like the grids. I mean, if you use them a lot, but if you don't use them, you hate them. So I think that's about 70, 80, maybe 90% that don't use grids anymore. They're sweet when you're ordering stuff in inventory, but short of that, they're not really terribly exciting. Right, so the remove of blank, proportional widths, those kinds of things. The properties, basically, is what we're talking about now. Some good examples of that on this design right here. Pull out a little bit there. So you see here, this Bill 2 heading field. We have the align with top and the remove with blank, right? So that's going to pull the store heading fields from the system preferences and populate 1 and 1, 2 and 2, et cetera, right? And if 2 is not populated, it's going to then make 3 move up and take up the space, align with top. You follow? So remove this one if it's blank, And then if the next one's not blank, align it with top. Now, I'm going to take this here and come over to the side here and notice that it's set to proportional with 1. Now, it's set to proportional with 1, which means on a ratio for the band, the box, the band that it resides in, I want it to be on a 1-to-1 ratio, right? That's what proportional with 1 means. So if I put in the proportional width, if I put in like 0.5, it's going to be half the width of the band, right? Now, when you put in a proportional width or height, it becomes kind of hard-coded, right? So if I then grab this with a mouse and make this bigger, it doesn't care what I do. It's going to ignore me. It's got like instructions that says make that be half the size, right? Now notice also when I put this on the same line as the other one, it refuses to go. So I'll switch if I get it right. There you go. But they will never be on the same horizontal plane. That is because align with top. In order to align with top, there needs to be a distinct order, right? So now, if you're doing align with top, remove a blank, and you're doing it for the vendor name, and you're doing it for the bill to address, and you're doing it for the ship to address, and they're all next to each other, then you couldn't have this heading 1 be on the same line as this one, could you? So you have to put them in their own boxes. Does that make sense? So the use of bands in this case, it's really important to understand that bands, they segregate, they separate different print areas and give you the functionality you need, right? You can sort of separate this and say, do this here, but do something else over there. That's kind of what's going on with bands here. So let's take a little more look. The top band here, this is a band header. This is a page header, excuse me. This prints on every page. This one here, the one beneath it, is a general, it's a design header, excuse me. And inside the design header are general bands. Those are child bands. So the design header prints at the beginning of the design, prints on page 1, right? So if I had a PO and I was printing it, I would want the page number, the logo of the company, and the PO number to be on every page. But I don't need the vendor's name and my address on every page, right? That's just wasting paper. Okay, so you understand a little bit about align with top, remove a blank, and bands, and how we segregate that stuff into the right places. Let's see what else over there is interesting that might be functional. Yeah, so here with these fields, we got a good one here. Let's just screw around with this one for a second. All right, so I made that a lot bigger, right? So I could set that to left justify or right justify, right? That's pretty straightforward. Everybody knows what that means. Center, right? The one below it is the other axis, right? So here I could say bottom, and it would go to the bottom of the field, right? Or it would go to the center of the field. Now, when you got a big field like that, it don't matter. Put it where you want it, right? Bottom line. If you have a really tight field, okay, what I want you to see is the default is top. And if I make this really short, what's going to happen, and you can kind of see it happening here a little bit now that I've gotten in, zoomed in a little bit. When I say go to the top of the document, what I'm really saying is put a hard margin on the top. Put yourself up next to you, but do not cross over the top, right? That's what top means. That means if the field is too short, it's going to clip at the bottom. You follow? If you're really tight on space, vertically, you want to set this to center. And now, another important aspect of the doc designer is that these things, these fields, and where they sit and how close they are, they lie to you. They lie to you a lot. Do not trust them. So in order to know what's going on, you need to preview them, right? And take a look at it. Now this is, I'm going to go with 85% accurate. You're going to need to preview it with real data from RPro. to get about 98% accurate. If you want to really see what it's going to look like, you're going to need to print one. But you see here, it's not clipping at all. To go back to here, how are we doing out here on that field? It's not really clipping. It kind of is, but maybe not. So let's see here. Fixed height, when you're dealing again with very small sections, you got this fixed height field. Let's make this 10. Okay, so 9. And now that, at this point, looks like it's clipping, and very well may be clipping. Let's take a look and see what it looks like if we click the preview button. And it is slightly clipping, right? But there are many cases you'll find where it'll look like it's clipping here, but not look like it's clipping when you actually bring it up. Yeah, I think that's still clipping a bit. I don't know, hard to tell. The screen does not refresh well, if you see what I mean. So you've got to toy around with it. That may be a bad example, but I will tell you for sure when you're testing stuff out. In fact, let me give you the best example. Let's go back to a receipt. So yeah, here we go. And this is not a great one. Let me see if I can find a better one. This one here is using labels. They had a certain way they wanted to do it. So we actually broke it up and put it into different labels, which is not actually that common. More common would be to use what's called a memo down at the bottom of the receipt design. And this one has like literally no return policy. Excellent. Oh, there it is. Perfect. So here, like right here. So here, if I go like this, and I say preview that, let's take a look at what's going on at the bottom here. Okay, so it actually, because of the print driver, it has to pop to the next page and follow. But that's because it has to use the default Windows printer to format this preview. But you see there's a lot of space at the bottom there, right? So let's pop back into the designer here. And let's take this field here and bring it up like that. Okay, that didn't work out well for me, did it? Let's close that. No. Let's open that back up. That's a good thing for you guys to see. That does happen. Sometimes they just get a little weird on you when you're not looking. And so be very wary of the doc designer in general. It save a lot as you go. So I'm going to first move this up like that. I'm going to click the little save button. I'm going to change this here, like that, and it's blowing up again. So we're going to say no to that and open it back up. So if you run into a situation like that, you want to save on a regular basis. When you feel like you've got something nailed down, save it, make a preliminary copy sort of, or even do a save as, right? And kind of save it as you go. Right, so no undo. Every time I touch that field, it seems to get really wonky on me. I'm not sure why. I'm not going to troubleshoot it too much here because I'd be wasting all of our time. I'm going to try another trick real quick, though, see if I can get a little closer to what I'm trying to show you. And if not, then we'll scrap that design and go on, right? Because we're not really here to fix a design. It's definitely a memo. It's not a rich text. All right, so to edit a memo, by the way, you click on the memo, and whereas a label, you just type it in the caption at the top. There's a text field, and you have to open the text field up to edit that. Not a big deal, pretty easy to do. I'm going to hop up to the next level, though. I'm going to go up to here and see what happens if I play with this here real fast. Right, so that's definitely cut off, right? I think we can all see that. Let's see what it looks like here, though. And it is cut off. So in this case here, it's not lying to us. It's actually being pretty straightforward. But do not trust it. I'm just going to tell you up front, it will lie to you. It will definitely not always work out to your benefit. So a little trial and error is always a good thing. Yeah, all right, so now we're back to the 2-page thing and it's popping over. So in Retail Pro, both versions, if you are familiar with your workstation settings, you can go into options, workstation preferences, and I probably should go into both and make sure we take a quick peek at both. But for a given area, like receipts, and typically when I'm designing, I would do former receipts, not new receipts. I don't want to make a new one every time I want to test it. I just want to print an old one, right? So former receipts, this preview button right here, not this one down here. This means allow me to change designs or allow me to choose previewing at time of printing, right? I don't want to see that menu. I just want it to go to the preview. If you're doing a lot of work on a design in a certain area on a workstation in the back that's not a point of sale, go set yourself to, first off, don't turn this off and pick the design you're working on, right? So you want to pick the design that you're actually editing and default it to that in preview mode. And then you can just go and test it for real over and over again, printing a real receipt. And you really can actually literally stay on the receipt. So I could be on the receipt all the time, and I could just hop between this screen here and the Doc Designer, right? Boom, back and forth. So I could tweak it. I could pop back out of there, exit that, minimize this. Could go out here. I could click print. It'll just automatically knee-jerk to the preview. Boom. And that spacing there, you can see, because of the driver and what's going on out there in the Doc Designer, that did not present well in the Doc Designer, but here it's actually presenting quite well. The spacing is pretty good. So, and here again is a situation where that discount inserts, you see the third line inserting there for each of those items that were discounted. In this case, there's some wacky data. We got a negative discount. That means that the original price was lower than the actual price. That's just wacky data is what that is. But all right, so yeah, I think that covers most of what I can think of to go over here. We will take a quick peek at in version 8, same setting. If we go back out to the main menu and go to options, workstation preferences, and it's the same pretty much. In version 8, you have one other option in the printing section. So here in printing for receipts, you see you have this override. So if your override is checked, then you're using this setting. In which case you would go in and say, preview, right? Preview right there, and don't preview down there, right? So that's exactly the same functionality-wise. But if you're not using the override, and receipts often don't use the override, by the way. So if you're not using the override, then you're using these individual settings. And again, I would go to former receipts, and I would then pick your printer and set your design file and check off your little buttons and pick your paper size. And that would let you just preview it on the fly really fast all the time, which is pretty cool and useful for testing. So is there any other questions? We got about like 6 minutes here before I turn into a pumpkin and have to run away. But is there any other questions, or is there anything I did not cover that somebody wanted to have covered? You can throw it in the chat. I can unmute you if you're muted. I don't know. We had some feedback. I muted some of the microphones earlier. And I want to make sure that anybody has a need to have a question answered gets it. You know what I mean? Okay. Well, I'm going to say thank you for joining. If you have any doc design questions, of course, my email's on the thing. It's just Jeff K, Jeffk at BigHairdDog.com, and certainly I would be glad to answer any questions or help with any doc design concerns or issues you have. Most of the doc designs that we play with in inventory, I'm responsible for. Mostly they come from actually people like yourself. People out there in the field ask me, hey, can you create a doc design for me that would give me the ability to, do something that we're not currently doing. Like this one here was created because somebody wanted to pre-count items. They wanted to filter for a group of items, pre-count them, and then they wanted to stick something on the outside of the box that both showed them their quantity and their barcode, and then they could just scan the outside of the box, right? So that's what that's trying to render there in version 8, which maybe was a mistake. I don't know. Let's see. It's version 9 faster. Now that I started it, I feel like I have to finish it. Oh yeah, version 8, that was a mistake. I thought it was in version 9, right? So in version 8, if I say print, and I say, give me a pre-count sheet, all listed records, it's going to let me cancel it. In version 8, you can't do this. In open inventory, you can't stop the print job in version 8. In version 9, you can. So the pre-count sheet looks like that. It gives you basically a description of the item, a little picture if there is one, a barcode, and then a place for you to write in the count. And this could be then placed on the outside of the box. But again, this is just a doc design trick. That's what this is. This is a repeating band in inventory, and I just added some fields. That's all it is, really. So, and there's all kinds of tricks we can do. We've created doc designs to do a great many things, to show price levels, to show alternate ALUs and UPCs, to do markdowns and show the markdowns correctly. There's a ton of stuff that is done. So if you do have a need, let me know. Give me a holler. And other than that, I'm going to tell you guys to have an excellent rest of the week, an excellent weekend. And thank you very much for joining us today. Appreciate it. I know you guys are all busy. So take care, and I will see you guys next time then. All right. Bye-bye.